smell something. Good afternoon, planet Earth. Welcome to Wild Earth. Welcome to our drive this afternoon here at Djuma Game Reserve. Stickers in there, they're shouting. Quite a hot afternoon. Turned out to be a lovely day after all. I need to put my other glasses on. Sorry, you're looking at my sunglasses. How rude of me. Had a lot to squeeze in this last few minutes before going on drive, and I wanted to start off at quite a special tree that's in bloom at the moment, but we'll get back to it shortly. My name is Mark, and Wim is with me on camera. Have you painted your thumb?
No, that's a price trademark.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you should put different flag nationalities or something. Or do the little thumb like on face. And of course Brian in the thumb. Final control. This is the Kruger National Park, part of the greater Kruger National Park. An area of this vast, or let me put it this way, a small patch of this vast area that is Kruger Park, known as the Sabi Sand Private Game Reserve. It is a game reserve that's made up of a bunch of privately owned properties that joined forces basically created the likes of a conservancy, but it's a little different to a conservancy in that it is a natural habitat. It's relatively untouched habitat, and it's contiguous with Kruger, so it's been able to be incorporated into Kruger for the last 20 years or so, and made quite a difference in a number of things. Made a difference in animal movements, most certainly, but I think overall the fact that the individual properties are not micromanaged anymore, that there's a greater or there's a much broader management plan for the greater Kruger National Park that actually benefits the wildlife, as opposed to the micromanagement that was taking place in the days of fences, when some of these areas were a lot smaller and needed more intense management. Now, this is where I wanted to start off this afternoon, but this is where, well, I haven't started much, but this particular tree that has plethora of insects buzzing around it. Probably mostly wasps and flies and bees. I need to somehow get up there and get a sample, or at least catch a whiff. And in the meantime, you can have a look. Oh, I don't know if it'll be an archive, but there'll be some of you that remember about 4 years ago, and I think Penny Leg will be one of them, because Penny was helping me trying to identify this. But they are quite pretty flowers. I think it's the kubu berry. Oh, you're looking at me, you should be looking at flowers. That's the book bag, that's the book box, by the way. An old ammo crate with all the books. No, not all the books, just a few. No, that's wildflowers. We don't want wildflowers. We want trees. So I'm just going to quickly have a look at this. I could stay there all day the numbers of insects on those tiny little flowers. They're little clusters of tiny little ball type flowers. I think we came to a conclusion it was a kubu berry in those days. 140. But I don't think it is. Definitely not. Okay, well, I don't have to, we can't really do it today, but I would like to try and get a better idea of it maybe in a day or two during drive, or between the drives. I'll come back. Beautiful flowers, even if they're very, very tiny, but very, very heavy spikes of flowers that are very faintly scented. They don't really need to be scented, being a diurnal flower or requiring diurnal animals to pollinate them. It's more the nocturnal flowers that require, or that have scent, stronger scents. Who knows, probably, or you could even scent at night. And well, we'll be coming past here after drive to switch off the repeater, so we'll probably be able to smell it later. So what makes that tree very interesting is, to my knowledge, it's the only one of its kind on the area of Djuma that I've been able to see, and that would be pretty much from all the roads. The fact that it's in flower means that there'll be others that are in flower, and because it's such a striking little tree, well, that's little because it's been hammered by elephants over the years. Hammered, I mean, it's just been utilized, and so constantly recoppicing, so it's got lots smaller branches than there are single trunks. But I would imagine the tree itself develops a pretty decent single trunk and then becomes quite profuse. And the regional variation is so minute. I mean, it's not that far. Manyeleti is about halfway for me between here and my place. If we were to take maybe the open road as the halfway point, the top of Manyeleti, we were to go straight from here going due north, would end up at Mini. We'd have to go through the Manyeleti and then through the Timbavati. There's another nice flower this afternoon. Bright sunshine on it. Normally a variety of chafers, what we call flower chafers, Cetonid beetles. This is the African wattle, by the way. Not too many wattles flowering at this stage. My weatherman back in FC, the weatherman Brian, saying that at the moment we are experiencing roughly 33 degrees Celsius. That translates as about 91 Fahrenheit. Mild afternoon here in sunny summer South Africa. South Africa. Perth, one word. S-U-F-A-F-R-I-K-A. South Africa. Any news? Any zoomies? Do you have any news on elephant at Gari Dam today? Djuma waterhole. that big elephant bull might have come this way. We need to actually head over towards where he was, maybe via the dam, via Gowrie Dam, and towards Treehouse, and go and see, because he was heading in a sort of a northeasterly direction. That lovely big elephant bull this morning, northeasterly direction from Arathusa airstrip. That would have brought him out onto, pretty much onto the junction of Zoe's Road or Philemon's Cut Line, almost Treehouse Dam direction. Dark green patch that we can see just off to the right of this clump of bush, and they're now on the sort of right of your screen. There's a bit of a dark patch. You can see all of that is that red star zinnia. It's a huge patch of zinnia flowers amongst the grassland. Fortunately it's not too big, and hopefully it doesn't spread too much, but it could theoretically take over the grassland, and if it did, it might be very, very pretty in the early summer when the rains have come and the zinnias are flowering, but it'll destroy all the grasses here for all the grazing animals, and so that there won't be grazers here anymore. So as pretty as the zinnia is, it actually shouldn't be here, and it is one of those plants that was brought to South Africa for its beauty, for its growability, I think, to coin a new word. I don't know if there's such a word, but because you can just throw seed down and they grow. But it's because of that they've become wild, and they are just invading larger and larger areas. There are reserves further west from here, closer to civilization, who don't have the grazing anymore, and they actually have to supplement their animals' diet, because in those cases a lot of those little reserves are self-contained, and they sometimes have to supplement animals' food during the severest of the dry season. And all because there are a couple of alien species of plants that prevent, or that have taken over from the indigenous. A story we know from so many different parts of the world where animals or plants have been introduced that don't belong and have found conditions ideal and able to proliferate, because they're just a lot more sturdy than the local indigenous species that are susceptible to the slightest hint of climate change or weather change. Thank you to Dave in the UK. Hi there, Dave. Thanks for the info. Not ellies that have been seen at Gowrie Dam in the last couple of hours. And Kim in California has asked a pretty good question there. Kim, thank you for that. It should have been an extension of what I was talking about, but I'm glad you asked the question because it prompts the subject to continue for a little while as we're actually driving through now. Where we're driving through now is just virtually all zinnia. Under these marula trees, it's a zinnia carpet. And that's probably because in days gone by when there might have been cattle here, or just overgrazing when there were fences, or who knows, for whatever reason this became somewhat denuded, and it would have been that way because these marula trees would have been providing the only shade at certain times of the year when animals accumulating under the shade would actually trample the ground and destroy any indigenous seed. So the first thing that takes hold is of course the alien, and they just proliferate each year. So it is vital. Actually, one does have to do a physical interference. And Kim in California was asking, are there any programs to eradicate these aliens? And there are some government-funded alien eradication programs. There are areas of South Africa that are under far worse threat from aliens than thank you, Isaac. I was going to pull off here. Workshop vehicle probably switching off the pump. Come on, Isaac. Get up that. And down in the Cape, I think is a far worse problem. There are a number of species of plants in South Africa that have been brought here for either commercial reasons or for cosmetic or aesthetic reasons, but the ones that were brought here for commercial reasons are the wattles from Australia, and to some extent the eucalypts. But it's the wattles and their families that have taken over areas of the Cape, and you have to know as well that the Cape Floral Kingdom is probably one of the most diverse floral kingdoms, if not the second most diverse floral kingdom in the world. There's I think only beaten by the Amazon. Over 900 species, well over 900 species of plant in the fynbos biome alone, and there are different biomes other than fynbos. There's the Renosterveld, and then there's the Cape fynbos, there's the high altitude fynbos. Fynbos directly translated means fine bush, because most of those plants have got very, very fine leaves, because they've adapted to the extremely windy and hot, dry conditions that prevail in summer, because it's a winter rainfall area. And in the coolness of the winter rainfall areas, they don't need such a broadleaf exposure, because those same broadleaves would desiccate, dry out, and would become such a fire hazard. So that's the other thing, that they've evolved with fire. Not that they've evolved or they've adapted to fire as an entity. It's more a case of they have grown with fire, that fire is actually in some cases vital to their existence, because it's hot, dry summers with the strong warm southeasterly winds. Well no, they're actually cold. I think it's the northwesters that are warmer. It's the berg wind. But there, the government has put millions and millions into eradication of those plants, and there's an incentive, in fact, that the government gives kickbacks for people who actually hire staff to physically go out and kill these plants. Because you can't, in some cases, you can't use herbicides, you can't use any other method than physically pulling them when they're juveniles to stop them from seeding. But sometimes the seeding has layered so deep and so thick over the years, over decades of these wattles, and there's another tree called Roykrans or called Jackson, whose seed layers is something like 30,000 seeds per square meter over the years, and they only germinate after fire, so they too. Anyway, so cut a long story short, those kind of problems are more demanding and more deserving of government funding than the private landowners who own land here in places like the Sabi Sand, the Timbavati, Kuseri, Baluli, Olifants and other areas. So what it is that the Kruger National Park then, under the management of these, it becomes the landowner's responsibility, but there is assistance if there's a severe encroachment of these alien species. But generally it's up to each landowner to make sure, and I'm not putting the onus on Yuri to do this because it's a physically impossible task. There are seed layers of zinnias out there that are going to last forever and ever, and there will always be zinnias rising. But I think the testament to the management of Djuma is that it is confined to shady areas under the trees where every year the animals denude the soil under the trees because they use the trees as shade. That brings the zinnias back, and outside from that, the rest of the quarantine area is actually quite pristine. It has the right succession of grasses. In fact, Yuri, the master ecologist that he is, has had policies that he's implemented that have helped with the natural progression of plant species, that it is actually a very good composition of plants, as we've seen with all the flowers, the herbs and forbs, and of course now all the different grasses that are growing there. Sorry Brian, I turned you down there, but I wasn't quite done. Hoping a hot day has brought some animals to the waterhole. These white flowers are... okay. This white flower, while I'm talking to Paul, still carpeting the ground here at Treehouse Dam. We might even be able to, if I roll forward, it's a nice little patch that VM can maybe zoom pretty close to. Oh, you already are zoomed. The Katakni, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I know that its scientific name refers to the fact that they say it grows like ivy, Hederaceum, and Hederaceum refers to its ivy-like appearance, but I'm not seeing anything close to ivy. Sorry, Cascanum. It's called a Cascanum. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember it. But I remember I did mark it in the book because there's an old leaf here on the page where the Cascanum is, where I remember looking it up when I was at home in the beginning of the season, because it only grows in very, very few areas along the road to my house, but well, to me, going through the reserve, but I haven't seen it at home. I suppose that's why I don't remember it too well. But Cascanum Hederaceum. It's known as a white trumpet. Evidently it's ivy-like in habit. Oops. Not ivy-like in looks, but ivy-like in habit. I suppose that is, in a way, quite spreading. Gravity Drive. Question has evaded me again. Question was about injured animals, and I have addressed this a number of times, and I'm going to say that I get tired of the question, but I sometimes don't understand where it comes from. There's millions and millions of acres of nature, and it's physically impossible to vet it, to look after every single animal. This isn't a zoo. This is a natural habitat with thousands and thousands of animals in millions of acres. It's not even if every vet in the country was on duty could you look after all of these animals. There is, however, a vet in the national park, in the main vet that decides on a lot of issues in Kruger, and of course there are other vets that can be called in. This was from Los Angeles. I'm trying to think who that was in Los Angeles. Brian will tell me, I'm sure. But no, you can't attend to every animal. You can't even begin to think of attending to every animal, or even most animals. Injuries are a part of nature, and injuries, as much as it would be very difficult to see a badly injured animal and to accept the fact that it is what it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. The only way to attend to an injured animal is to dart it, to drug it with a sedative that makes its muscles incapable of moving, yet its eyes and its ears and everything about its senses still work. So while humans are working on an animal that is drugged, it can hear things, it can certainly see things, which is why most of the time the eyes are covered. It can also smell things, and if you have any idea what an animal feels like when it is incapable of defending itself, the stress levels that animal goes through are tremendous, and 99% of the time will kill that animal just alone because it is being handled by humans. It's a very delicate balance between how much stress you can put an animal through to help it and how much you're actually going to hinder its progress, because they are resilient. Nature has been doing this for millions and millions of years before even us humans came along, before even there was an idea of veterinary science. And there's just times that we have to step back as emotional beings, as emotional humans, and we have to just go back to our primal roots, that we're just a part of nature and there's nothing we can do about it. But having said that, there are times and there are very different circumstances that arise that cause injuries and illnesses to animals. And it's a given almost that if there is a human cause to an animal injury, that time and money will be spent to do that. I guess that's another factor that I didn't throw into the whole equation. But the drugs to dart an animal, the fees sometimes when helicopters have to be called out, or when just the sheer expense of darting one animal, let alone treating it, let alone the drugs and medicines to treat it, which ordinarily should not even be an issue. I mean, one would think that there should be no question of money, but the problem is where that money comes from. And I think that's where one of the biggest stumbling blocks is that it's fiscally impossible. That buffalo got a fright because the geese were swimming behind him. Other one, they're going to swim past the other one. He's not going to worry. It's pretty bright there. Local Egyptian geese take to the water because we're coming across the dam wall. Interesting, they don't have duck goslings. Duckling, goslings. Sorry boys, I woke you up. Oh, kingfisher went for a swim. If we sit here long enough, he'll do it again. In the shade though. But then we can't see the dam. Okie dokes. Let's go see if we can find some tracks of this big bull elephant. He was in full must. I was going through a bunch of photos from a few years ago, and couldn't pick him out of the lineup. What I did find was a younger version of the other bull that was at Gowrie Dam the other day, the one that had the two big tears in his left ear. He's got a rather big tear up on the top and then another one at the bottom. He's got two gorgeous tusks. And I've got an elephant on film from a number of years ago. I must actually have a look at the date, but it's a good 5 or 6 years ago. With not quite as big tusks naturally because they grow all the time. But he's got the one big nick out of the top of his ear, and over the 5 or 6 years, if it's the same Ellie and he's just got longer tusks, he could have developed an extra hole in the bottom of his ear in the interim. It would be interesting if it is the same boy, just a few years down the line with slightly bigger tusks. Cascadon. Charlie in New Jersey. There's big leopard tracks here, but they're quite old and they're starting to look like a big male leopard. Charlie wants to know. Sorry. Listening. Radio came in. Wrong channel, I guess. Charlie wants to know, do we carry guns in the vehicle? No, don't carry a gun on it. Why do we need a gun? I've got elephants and lions and all sorts of animals to protect me. I'm not expecting any humans. I've got pepper spray for humans somewhere. I've got a pepper spray just in case. The only thing I have to worry about are humans, really. Hello little Steenbok, you're going to the toilet, and if you are, oh, she ran away. Not that I have this desire to see a Steenbok on a toilet, but they have a very interesting toilet behavior. Steenbok. They're almost like a cat. They make a little scraping and then they cover it up afterwards. Very neat little animals, the Steenbok. But it's not something that one gets to see very often. Not that we go out looking for Steenbok on the toilet, but if we watch them long enough, if they don't run away, we might get to see that. Nice big storm cell brewing in the southwest that we'll keep an eye on. It might move closer, and it will most certainly cover the sunset at some point because it's moving up north a little bit. As the sun is setting, the storm moves up and they're sort of going to coincide in the west. Hello Impala. 2 Impala running away. Here's a tree frog. We actually get to see a tree frog for a change, and it's gone very, very pale because it's waiting out these dry days for the next storm. And just back to the left of it, well, you've got a branch in the way. Okay, let me move. Just get that twig out of its face. This is the most beautiful frog that we have. We see a lot of them in the dry season, more so because now in the wet season they're hanging around these ponds and building their foam nests. My guess is this is a fairly large female because the male is a much smaller frog, and they have the ability to change, not really color, but change their tone. The very, very pale color that it is now is because it's been a very hot day, and so it's turned very pale to be able to reflect the light and heat, and it no doubt is sensing the difference in atmospheric pressure and that huge storm that is brewing in the southwest. And it's another indicator. We've seen a couple of indicators today that there is weather on the way, not the least of which is the fact that it has just been full moon. Should we try for a different angle of that frog, just for a slightly different perspective, because with that pale twig in the background it's hard to define it. So I'm going to just go back a little bit and turn in a little bit, and maybe slightly different. There's a termite mound just off to my left. No, I don't want any sticks in the way, so that means it has to be here. There's shadow of somebody's shadow, camera shadow. It's the shadow of the camera. There, now I've got sunshine on it. The African foam nest tree frog, also known as the grey tree frog, in the wet season, and when it's ready to be moving around and stuff, then it's not so hot, then it goes a lovely dark grey brown colour, slightly mottled actually. Now towards the background behind the frog are a lot of foam nests of the tree frog. A very long line of them, and unfortunately are behind this buffalo thorn for us to see too well. Okay, she's facing the way the weather is, and I think she's just hoping that the weather's going to be coming along our way. I hope so too, Froggy. Frogger. Fresh. Chela in there now, just to catch up on things. Spreading much further to the east, the storm. Lovely big bank of cloud. It's not quite a front actually, it's more just like a big cell. The edge of a big cell. Huge low pressure system. That is oh, there's a chameleon in the road. Hello chameleon, getting a little bit defensive, are you? We won't disturb you, child. We'll just watch you cross the road. And I'm going to cause a roadblock so that nobody comes until he's on the other side. But I think our presence is going to slow him down a little bit. But now I think also of him, I think we need to go the western side, so that the light is better. Oh, no, he's running. He's running. Sorry, child. Now one of the I used to. Oh, they can move very fast. They're lizards. Once he's close to cover, he'll move fast, but it's out in the open that it's going to move as slow that it was. So that it's like the wind blowing a leaf. And very narrow body when it's moving, but obviously when it gets disturbed, that body becomes sort of dorsoventrally flattened the other way. Now it's flattened long way, but then they flatten their rib cage the other way, and it makes it sort of a lot longer, elongated, and then puffs up its throat. There's a lot of orange in the throat when it puffs up. It's sort of a gula pouch. But it is now. I might even have a picture of chameleon tracks in my track book. So now, to recap, I've seen numerous snake tracks along the road, crossing the road. It's very strange, but not that surprising, that the tracks only ever cross the road. They don't go diagonal, they don't go along the road as much as it's always it's almost practically perpendicular. And I suppose the reason, the main reason for that is they're so exposed on the ground to eagles and falcons and or other birds of prey that they want to be over this little gauntlet as soon as they can. So the shortest distance between 2 points is obviously the quickest in their case. So you've seen a lot of snake. I've mentioned it, maybe I haven't been able to point them out to you. But I've seen a lot of snake tracks today. There were a bunch of monitor lizard tracks near the camp when we were leaving today. Tortoise tracks everywhere. I also saw quite a few tortoises this morning. Now chameleon, lizards have been busy. And when reptiles get busy, it means that there's an increase in insect activity. There's an increase in a lot of activity, but especially insect activity and subsequent higher up members on the food chain. And that, coupled with some other things that I saw this morning, to me tells me that we're in for rain in time. Not necessarily today, nor tomorrow, but at some point in the near future. These animals are gearing up for a cold period. They're gearing up for rain and wet and not moving much, so they're making as much as they can with the sunshine that we have. See, doesn't that sound like the cliche, or what is it? Make hay while the sun shines. What do you call that? Cliche. Oh, could not disturb those doves. They were doing what they do on Discovery Channel. And now she's preening. Morning doves, or laughing doves, sorry. Laughing doves. Doing it in the road. How far? To leave. Kathleen. Hi Kathleen. Thanks for the treat. How many kinds, how many types of chameleons are there in Africa? Wow, that's a difficult one. Many. But here in Kruger, Djuma, Sabi Sand, Timbavati, here in this part of the world, we only have 2 species of chameleon. We have that one. No, sorry, what am I saying? In South Africa we have two. We have one species here. Sorry. Didn't get that. Only one species here. That was what we saw now. It's known as the flap-necked chameleon. It has flaps on the back of the neck. I'll show you a picture, because as much as I would love to pick it up and show you, I'm torn between doing that and not stressing it out, so I'd rather not pick up. I think insects are a different story, and if I can on the odd occasion show insect, but I tend to, well, I can find dry skeletons effective, then I'm not disturbing anything. The flap-necked chameleon is pretty widespread throughout sub-Saharan Africa, and in other parts of Africa there are other species that are usually endemic to specific areas. Down in the Cape and Natal we get the dwarf chameleons. We get the Cape dwarf. I must actually look in my book. I'll bring it out in a sec, my reptile book, while we're chatting. I can't answer that off the top of my head as to how many species of chameleon there are in Africa, but I'm sure that my reptile book will give me some idea. Because I've never really thought of looking into how many species or genera there are of chameleons. Now we're coming on to Arathusa, because I want to see if I can find the tracks of this big elephant bull, because he was walking down this road and he was coming this way, but I think he might have headed east, because it doesn't look like he has turned and come. But let's try to see if he's crossed this road heading north. Just to answer that question, I think I can see a hornbill nest. No, maybe not. Stop briefly in the shade. Oh look, there's a francolin having a dust, or was having a dust bath. So as far as the dwarf chameleons are concerned, there are a bunch of them. I was going to say only two, but they're not. There are actually 15 species in South Africa of dwarf chameleons, but we've only got the one flap-necked chameleon. And these are the dwarf chameleons. This is the flap-necked chameleon. Give you an idea of a better idea of. Maybe you can you fill it up a little bit? Because there's this flap at the back of the neck for the flap-necked, but that's that sort of laterally compressed body of a big female, and the ability to change that posture to the very long thin one that we saw. So we've got 19 species. Okay, I didn't know that there were that many in southern Africa, because we've only have one here. But the dwarf chameleons, the very, very small chameleons, there are many, many different dwarf chameleons. I didn't know that the Cape dwarf was actually different to the Knysna dwarf. And then there's the western dwarf. Gosh, there's so many different dwarf chameleons, and all of them are somewhat endemic to very specific areas. So that's interesting. I've just learned something new. 19 different species of chameleons, of which 18 are dwarf chameleons. And there I was thinking that the dwarf chameleon, the range extended from the Cape all the way up to Natal. I had no idea that it was so, that there were so many different species. Even in KwaZulu-Natal different species for different mountainous regions that are not even subspecies, they're actually different species. So great, thanks for that question. So I've learned something new. Catch up with the guys here, let them know I'm around. Hello Mario. The Netherlands. How are you doing, Mario? Nice to have you with us this afternoon. Mario was out here last year on safari and we managed to get to spend a couple of days together. It's a very nice couple of days. And Marja wants to know if the elephant that we saw this morning is the same one that Scott saw. And I can't answer that because I don't even know which elephant it is that Scott saw, Marja. So I can leave that question up to some of the viewers, maybe, if they have perhaps some idea of whether it's the same elephant bull that Scott saw, or that Scott was with. I don't get to see Scott's drive really most of the time. You know, I haven't been in FC for a while, and that's mostly because of just the way things have been. In that I overnight is far away from Djuma and far away from the Sabi Sand, and we commute every morning. It's a 35-40 minute commute through Manyeleti and Sabi Sand, and with the jigger not working, we have to stay there because we've been expecting mechanics and we've been expecting people to come and help us with the jigger. So the crew that is off stays behind to help with that, and the crew that comes through. And by staying in Manyeleti, well, it's pretty difficult to keep track of what's happening on the drive then. And I suppose we don't really talk about it in depth once we get back to camp. Or what we saw, and Scott and I do chat, but we don't really go into detail about the sightings unless it's something special. So we wouldn't have been able to really discuss elephant at length yesterday, if it was yesterday, because there were visitors. Scott had some people coming, staying at, oh look, piglets. I haven't seen warthog for a while. Sorry, Miriam. And we're looking into the sun a little bit. But friends of Scott are up in Manyeleti, and when he got back last night after drive, he wanted to spend some time with them. And we all had a big barbecue and a big fire, and it wasn't really, well, we didn't discuss elephants. Chris. Hello, Chris. Chris the rogue. From one rogue to another. Chris wanting to know, do chameleons change color due to mood, emotion, or what was it? Concealment, or other reasons? It's a little bit of everything, Chris. Blending in. To blend in or based on its mood. Oops. Okay. Well, crown plover. While we're at it, we've got a bunch of plovers here that we should be able to look at as we approach this waterhole. So do they change colour to blend in or due to mood? And it's actually it's both. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I invaded your space. Yeah, nice, that's even worse. I need my lens cloth, but I've got one here somewhere. I figure I'll find something. Not working. The lens pen. That's okay. Where's that lens cleaner solution?
Research.
I'm still seeing spot. I'm still seeing. Marks on the lens. But that looks good now. Difference, Chris, there's a difference in the kind of and how those colors and how those markings change depending on whether it is to blend in or because of mood. But it's also a combination of the shape of the body and everything else. So when they're trying to blend in, the shape of the body is different to when they're stressed out and they're getting defensive, and that's when the color change is quite distinct when they are getting defensive or they're stressed out. So we've got two species of plover here, the crowned and the lesser black wings. Boom, boom, boom. Off they go. More lesser black wings. Beast and the zebra have been here rolling in the sand. So their blend-in colours are going to be more sort of the pale greens and the greens and things like that. They get stressed out, it gets very brown and dark. And when that gular pouch, when they inflate their or stretch out their gular sac, their throat skin bearing sort of orange colours. Look at this lilac crested roller, stunning in this light with that kind of background. That dove just nearly knocked it off the perch. Feathers look a little ruffled there, child. That's whose feather I've got in my cap. I see somebody thought it might have been a woodlands kingfisher. Another two rollers in the tree to our right. Looks like it could be an ivory tree, brown ivory. Probably his family. And that lovely silvery colour of the silver cluster leaf terminalias in the background. Hello, Judith. Judith is in New York, and Judith wants to know about cheetah sighting. Any luck with cheetah sightings? Not for the last few days, as far as I know, Judith. I haven't heard anything on the radio. We certainly haven't had any cheetah sightings ourselves for some. In fact, I don't think we've had any sightings again in November. So, unfortunately for our cameras, we haven't been. Not yet. We could have one round the next bend. But as it is so far, there have been no sightings, I think, in the last couple of days. I haven't heard anything on the radio. There. Hello, boys. Yeah, or the wildebeest. Hello, children. Oh, okay. I'm getting a little whisper in my ear about elephant at Arathusa. And if they're at the dam, let's try and get there. But we're gonna have to sort of come past the airstrip on the back. The beast and Impala. The noon, the evening wears on. So, getting word from, I guess, maybe people that are on Arathusa Dam Cam that there's a herd of ellies there, and well, I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't even go and investigate. You don't want me to go, huh? You want want a bit of camera time, Mr. Impala? Sure, I'll give you 15 seconds of fame. Hello, boys. Beautiful light. Whoops. Bumps in these roads. Very bright looking into the sun. I'm going to be putting my shades on because we're driving into the sun, so please excuse them. And I don't know if you can get a close-up of that very distant. In fact, it's a really beautiful view of not only the cloud and the approaching weather that's moving up the escarpment, but also just the vast distances that we have. It just goes on forever. Oh, Patty in New York. Hello, Patty. Patty wants to know what I do with all the feathers that I find. I put them in containers and make like an arrangement, like a big fan of feathers. And boy, I've had hundreds over the years. Oh, and I've just lost my owl feather. Flew out of my hand. Okay, I'll pick it up. If I can reach that far to the ground without falling out of the car. No, I think I won't. Can do it from my Land Rover, but this one is a little bit high off the ground. My arms aren't long enough. Okay, let's get to white feather. Okay. Clovers, no doubt. Beautiful feather. I should have stopped. But maybe if we're going to be here this afternoon and it's going to be getting evening time, we'll come back and have a look to see if back here. We saw them this morning. Parasite striped jackal. Obviously a bit too hot. Hot and rough for right now. Unfortunately, feathers don't last very long. There are mites and larvae of certain flies that actually feed on the base of the shafts, feed on the base of the feathers themselves, and they disintegrate over time. But I tend to, what I do at home, I've got a couple of, it's almost like we call it a vase. I think in the States it's called a vase. Vase, a vase. So the whole big story of how you pronounce everything wrong in the States. But, I mean, what's this about aluminum? It's not aluminum, it's aluminium. Every element, not every, but most elements in are IUM. Okay, but we won't get into that discussion right now. But I put feathers in either a pot or a vase or vase, and I spread them up, very big feathers at the back and the smaller ones, so it looks like a big feather arrangement. Always done that. I've done that for 30 years. Always had feathers. Even had feathers featured in a movie once. One of those arrangements. In fact, I had a couple of arrangements. I used to know, I had some friends who bred parrots, and they had a huge bird farm. And as much as I'm not really for it, but captive bred birds can't go back into the wild. So what we're gonna do, I guess. Anyway, so cut a long story short. I used to get a lot of feathers from them and from other people who kept pheasants. And I had a red arrangement and a blue arrangement and a mottled arrangement browns. Most of the browns were a lot of our local birds, but there were a lot of blues that went into the blue with blue macaws and some of the sort of domesticated parrots, or rather captive bred parrots, and colourful birds. They're all over time, all just disintegrated over time. Fascinated with feathers. I've always collected them. Now at Arathusa Lodge, we're just going to be skirting the lodge off to our right. We're going to be heading around the lodge onto the dam wall, and then hopefully we might see some ellies there. If anybody could maybe keep me informed through Brian, if you are watching the Arathusa camp, give me an update please. At the water. Well, we are minutes away, and I guess in a way perhaps you do have the waterhole camera, but I can't see that, so you're going to have my camera as well. You're going to have two different angles of the same ellie. Does that sound acceptable? Not everybody's going to be watching the waterhole camera. Those people that's going to be watching, or anything we can find for you. Look at that. Oh. And they look like a bunch of bulls. I was thinking that maybe it was a family group. Monkey's going to be happy. And there are no guests out here. I mean, it's the perfect afternoon to be sitting at the lodge. Oh, no, what? Dead? He's dead.
I think you'll be able to see the elephants.
You don't think so?
No.
Why?
Too low down.
Too low down? The signal?
The monkey.
Oh no, he won't. Oh, you on the monkey?
I think you won't be able to see the
No, I'll move him.
Oh.
I'm not worried about him seeing them. I'm worried about the viewers seeing him, seeing them.
More to the left.
More to the left. Oh, they're down here below the dam wall. Hello boys. Oh, he's going to have a sand bath. This is just perfect. I'll move monkey. Just for now, we'll just stop and watch this boy. Oops. the other three. We'll worry about the other three in a bit. I misunderstood. I thought, well, there's a cow here, so there are bulls that are maybe courting a cow. Maybe I'm not seeing any of these youngsters in must though. But 3 bulls with this one young cow. One has to maybe question, what are you up to, boys? Yeah, just because I'm looking at her doesn't mean that I'm really that interested, so I don't even think about. Hello, boyki. Jambo bona tembo. Yeah, I think Brian telling me that the young ones with the cows were here earlier, but they didn't seem too happy and they left. Must be them that are below the dam wall. Here comes this young cow now. She's coming towards us. And it'd be interesting to see this little bit of interaction between this young girl and these bulls. Looks like they might be troubling her. Why are you standing on your trunk? Hello, boyki. This is where we need that big bull that we saw this morning, because he would come in and sort these boys out. She might be interested. She might be in estrus. She's not really tolerating the behavior of these bulls. She's actually poking that other youngster now. She's poking him in the butt, chasing him away a little bit. Was that another cow? Oh no, got its back to me. That's a little boy. That seems to be her boyfriend, and then there's this younger bull, or rather this bigger bull now. He's trying to muscle in. So maybe it's kind of unaccepted love that she wants that younger bull, but the bigger bull is asserting his dominance. Hello. Kingfisher at Woodlands just caught something right in front of me. Yeah, that's weird. We're on the kingfisher. I've swallowed it already. Jennifer, hi Jennifer in New York, was asking if they ever get sand in their eyes. Off we go as kingfisher trying to catch something else. Jennifer was asking when they're throwing sand up, do they have sand in their eyes, or do they have some protection? Well, Jennifer, with this young female catch and start to do with sand. Well, okay, so how are we looking now? Maybe we're just sort of on the edge of signal. Okay, good. Jennifer was asking, do they get sand in their eyes when they're throwing sand on themselves? But no, not at all, Jennifer, because they know exactly where that sand is going. So when they're taking sand and they're throwing on it, and in fact you'll find that if they have a little bit of an eye irritation, they'll actually blast sand at their eye or at their ear. In fact, at any irritation that they might have, But when they do that, they'll close their eye. So the only protection they have is very much the same as our protection, which is closing the eye and preventing the sand from going into the eye merely by closing the eye. Looks like she's digging in, yeah, she's digging for water, that young cow. And oh no, she stopped. But it looks like that she's got these 3 bulls that are trying to, each one of them are trying to, and she's playing coy. Look at that, brushing up against branches and posing. There goes the bigger bull now. Since she's moved away from this younger bull, he's trying to muscle in. I think she really, all she wants is to get back to the family, which are below the damn wall. Don't know how much we can follow them, but we can try. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to do this. There's no way we can get through here. It's just it's like this big mud pool. So as much as I would love to try and follow them, going to create a few problems. Trunk. Well, we'll see if we can see them from the top of the damn wall. Maybe there's a way around here. I'm not sure. Maybe. Okay, copied. There's an old road. I don't think we're allowed to go down there. We have to go around the back. Susan wants to know what these concrete blocks are. they mark where the road is when in case of the dam flooding. If it was to be that the dam would fill so much, this is the spillway of this, the low lying area of the dam, that it would still demarcate the edge of the causeways, because this would become a causeway. It would be flowing over this dam wall. Over here, as you can see, it sort of rises up from here. From here there's this rise, and then there's another rise, and then it rises up a little bit more in the sandy patch, and this is what we would term the spillway. So because it's the spillway, then they need to have a few little, if it was anything a little bit higher and bigger, it would create too much of an obstacle, or too much of a resistance to the water and likely damage things. So they're just little blocks that may stand out above the overall height of. But here's the rest of the herd. Look at this, we're right above them now here on the dam wall. We're able to actually, because it's quite great, because I'm sure maybe whoever's zooming will be able to see us. I can see the camera from here towards the deck and the dining room of Arathusa. What we can see as well is, right, there's the camera. Behind the camera, the thatched roof is sort of the lunch area, and then off to the left of that is this deck that sticks out over the dam, this most beautiful view over the dam. To the right of all of that is the bar area with the swimming pool. We can actually see one of the staff members collecting the chaise longue mattresses, but that's enough for the lodge for now. We've got elephants below us, there are a lot of them, and before they disappear. And of course there's the room flow pool I didn't show you, but we'll get there another day. There's a very big quite a nice bull. It looks like he's also been fooling around with the herd. We haven't seen him. Also a Colombian dwarf below the dam wall, Arathusa. Gaffer. Gaffer. Best visual from the dam wall at the moment. A bit marshy there, but we could maybe go down here. I'd have to walk it first, but we could probably go down here if I was allowed, but it would just cause so much trouble for the wall. If the tires slip and we slide, then it creates erosion. I don't know how much better we can get to see them. We can try. There is a road that loops around below the dam wall because let's go around. There's a road that sort of loops around. We might be able to see them because they are heading down the drainage line. And well, there's nothing to see here. So let's see. Now heading west down the drainage line, so I've lost visual from dam wall. What's that lock on the Ingwe on safari? Last station, go again. Don't know if we can do it. There might even be a leopard for us to go and look at. Sounds like it might be somewhere where that big elephant was earlier. No, see, I don't think these are outlying rooms from Arathusa. There's a road that's shown that goes below the dam wall. Now the zebra. Zebra and kudu. Hello, Mr. Zebra. And Mrs. Kudu. We're now a little bit too fast to the southwest. Nice little family group of kudu here. As well as a little zebra family. Fortunately, since I don't know how or what happens once copulation takes place, but I don't know that one copulation will be successful. So, then to even reception happened after what single population. And I've never been with them. I'll just wait a second. What happened to you, primate? Tried a different tactic. Go back across the animal and go in from the other side because a new room is going to be built. I've been here before. I've never sure if this is exactly where that ran down below the dam wall. Might be easily accessed from the other side of the dam. Was that it? No, that wasn't. Power generator. Silent tank. Like a fig tree growing out of his level. I think this was the road that appears on a very old map. And maybe it won't be there. It's weird actually, and from Indiana, that I spend so much time with elephants, but actually I haven't really seen them mate that many times. It's like I have been around animals most of my life, but I've never seen a wild birth, or I've never seen anything giving birth in the wild. And the only birth that I really have seen has been a cow that I witnessed. Hippo's out of the water. I'll come and see hippo shortly. The idea is to try and get to see. And I'm also thinking that that old road that was packed with sticks is maybe the same road that I'm trying to get on. But nonetheless, we're going to see whether we can get around this. I'm not sure. Otherwise we'll just come back to the hippo. Hope we might get to see these eddies again. They are heading west. It's been a few minutes now since they left the find that they're going to cross it. Hoping that this is coming through, because we're at a couple of pans that are quite well below the Arathusa waterhole. I've never been here before. This is a new area for me. There's a huge herd of buffalo. I think I've even seen a tawny eagle or something go into a nest. We'll have a look at that. But this whole area that is below Arathusa Dam seems to be a little bit too low for the signal to get through. And well, just to the left of the road, there you can see the road ahead of us, and to the left of that there got to be 100 buffalo lying in a very tiny little pan, and to the left of us is another pan with not a single buffalo in it, and it's almost inconceivable. It's like, what's wrong with this swimming pool? And it might just be that they are so single-minded that some of them found water, them are actually coming here, but I can't really believe that, because they've got to be able to know where water is. And the whole herd is still coming sort of from the southwest, heading northeast and piling into this other waterhole that is now becoming very full. So unfortunately the signal area here is very, very low. It's not really, I've managed to climb onto a little bit of a rise and stop, and as long as I've stopped we can see something. So we're going to just have a look at the end of this buffalo herd crossing the road ahead of us. I've tried to stop a few times at that waterhole where they are. What I'm going to do is I'll try and get onto maybe higher ground on the other side of it again, but just for a moment, just to stop and watch some of these buff as they come across. There's a calf just on the other side of that wallow that's trying its eyes out for its mother, and she's probably just having a mud bath, not really too bothered. But it can be a little bit dangerous for them, I guess, in a way, in that a calf crying like that is only going to attract the attention of something big. But then again, it's a bit of buffalo and they do get very defensive, and if they tried to go near that calf, the whole herd would probably come in and defend it. It's how they're able to move around like a herd of cows, quite confident that as a group they put up a strong enough defense. Actually hear it calling, you can hear it crying. Sadly there was no way to follow those ellies, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to come out somewhere that might be visible. But considering where we are on Arathusa, we're very, very close to the western boundary of our traversing area once again. Arathusa does carry on a lot, but we're only really traversing on a very small portion of Arathusa, and we need to get back to the signal area, but also want to get back closer back to the camp of Arathusa and see if we can't find out more about that leopard. We're also in a dip here for the radio, so the radio is not very clear. I can't really communicate with the guys. And before we go, though, another flower moment. There's a little crop of wild foxglove to my right. Mark here, go ahead. Yeah, you're welcome. You can take over the lock. Be able to keep the signal, but there's a chance that we're going to lose the signal. missed a few bumps and grinds with us. Got it with that big herd of buffalo at the pan called Cease Pan, and it's just unfortunate, really sad. We did stop with most of them in the water, and there was a cock bellowing by then, and it's great sight. So I'm trying to explain to you what was going on there, but anyways, they're settling down now, and one pan paused for the road for another vehicle that came in, and they calmed down, moving back towards. Sometimes it's hard to tear myself away from really beautiful sights we see, because we can't broadcast them to you, and I've got to sort of sit down. If you can't see it, I can't see it. Spend more time with the LEs, but even if I found them again, we wouldn't have been able to follow them for the same reason that we couldn't follow. We would have been low down that was that area. Oh, hello squirrel, where are you going? Hello child. It's a well-endowed squirrel. But that is because it's a breeding season. And strangely enough, their testicles grow accordingly. A pretty good question from D in Connecticut. Hello D. Asking if a buffalo cow who is with calf is killed, will another female then raise the calf? Well, that might be to witnessing there, and I don't know the answer to that. While they're all very, very protective, I'm not sure, in my experience, I'm not sure of any time where I've ever seen a buffalo suckling another calf. Oh gosh, yes, okay, you're right, that was beautiful if he stays there. We'll pretend that we're not looking at him. Oh, see, now he's jumped away. He was a little bit more exposed when we stopped. Yellow-billed hornbill. I don't know if it will help if we go back now to see more of his body, but we're making eye contact with him, that's for sure. Or he is with us. Okay. I'll be more attentive next time I have an opportunity so we don't stop and have to go back. So, what? In daylight. What's up, scrub hair? You think it's going to storm, so you want to come out early, but it's not tonight. Only reason why I can think that a scrub hare is exposed like this right now is that it has been flushed from its daytime sleeping place, which is generally in very thick bush. Those huge eyes of the family of hares that give them nocturnal vision. But it's looking nervous. It looks like it's panting. It's also very attentive. The ears are very, very active. And not hearing any alarm calls, but and now relaxing. That's been quite recent that it actually arrived here. Very unusual to see a scrub hare with the sun still up like this, out in the open. Looks like a rabbit, but it isn't a rabbit. It's a hare, and off he goes. After we had a testicular come and make a lot of noise at us. And that brings me back to a question I think I was still in the process of on email, because I've got a question that was sent to me from FC. Somewhere I should be able to find it. But it was a question about scrub hares and the habits of scrub hares, and whether they're any similar to how rabbits operate or behave, or what rabbits do, but very different rabbits, and defining things about, or the very things. But there's a hammerkop. And two white-tailed ducks flying over. I wonder if that means the hammerkop is a nest. So what makes scrub, or rather hares, or what distinguishes hares from, not necessarily anything outwardly physiological, other than the fact, of course, that they have, there's a buffalo, they have very long ears, and there are other interesting things about their ears that I could talk about, how the length varies depending on the habitat, but they're solitary. Hares are solitary. They tend to be nocturnal, and they don't build burrows. Being solitary, they don't need to live in an underground community. They live above ground, and they make a scraping when they have their youngsters. And the very fact that they live above ground, very much like the game birds, the francolins and things that live on the ground, and their chicks need to be precocial. Their chicks need to be able to hatch out of the egg and run around pretty quickly. It's only really the birds that live in nests in trees that can afford to have young that are born a lot earlier in their development, and they can be nurtured because they have a nest to protect them. So hares are very similar in that respect, in that they live above ground. So when they give birth, like an impala, like any of the other herbivores, when they give birth, they're giving birth above ground. They can't afford to have these tiny little rabbit-like nymphs that are born, that rabbits have, and those youngsters have to move around fairly quickly after birth. But also very much like the other herbivores, hares can't really afford, being solitary, can't really afford to have multiple births, so they'll have one or two, and I don't know, maybe three. I guess it's possible that they might have triplets. But they have a very, very few births, as opposed to rabbits that can have multiple births because they're confined to a burrow or a warren or a den with many other rabbits, and it's a communal society, that, and so it's an entirely different scenario with rabbits. So for the hares, they're born with sight, they're able to move around like most of the other herbivores after birth to avoid predators. And rabbits, well, we just don't have rabbits. That's the other thing. There are no rabbits here. We do have some rabbits in the country that are mountainous. They are a couple of throughout Africa. I'll dig out my mammal book, Jonathan's book, and have a look at that and see what sort of species we have. But in this part of the world, we have no indigenous rabbits. Rabbits tend to be diurnal. They live in burrows. Later, dude. A pair of Egyptian geese that live here too, I've been keeping from, well, I'm sure the buffalo has been keeping from the water. Is that the road or is that the road? Another road. That looks like a better road. Get back up to the entrance driveway. I would have to find my device and try and operate it, but I don't want to do that. But that would tell me, it would give me an idea of who that, because I've got that on email. Who asked me the question? The question of rabbits and hares, and how they nest, how they feed, what they do. Huge Tambuti forest here. This is 90% Tambuti on our left. Beautiful. Look at this leadwood. Old dead leadwood that is like a sculpture. Well, at least we had a little bit of an elephant day today. Even if our experiences haven't been very lengthy in time, they've been very special in moment. You understand that? There only needs to be that one moment of connection, that one moment of acknowledgement, or one moment of mutual appreciation for whatever mood it may be in. Sorry. Bumpy road. I think for the rest of the evening, signal should be fine. We're heading back towards home turf. Let's see what. I think that was Julie. I think I got most of that. Julia. Julia. Who sings that song? No, you wouldn't know. Wrong time zone. I'll find it. I'm sure it's on my iPhone. Julia wants to know about buffalo. A question about the horns of buffalo. When you see the youngsters, their horns go straight up. And she was asking about the development, how it is that they turn and then curve up and then develop into that huge pass. Well, it's a matter of time, really, Julia. It's a very specific aging period, so you can actually age buffalo as their horn growth develops, as you can with most antelope. One of the defining things about antelope is that they have continual horn growth pretty much throughout their lives, as opposed to deer who shed their horns every year and their horns grow very quickly over a season. Antelope, on the other hand, their horns are permanent. They start from a very young age, and maybe we'll even start looking a little bit closer. Since you've asked this question, we'll start having a look a little bit closer at the development of horns, and it's so much easier to actually sit with a group of animals and sort of guess and gauge their ages by the growth of the horns. And when you spend a lot of time with them, it's not that you can tell how old they are on our calendar, but it's more a case of, well, you saw certain individuals that were that size their first summer, and then their second summer, and then their third summer, and so on and so forth. For a lot of antelope and a lot of bovids, it takes a few years. Things like kudu, I think it's 6 years before their horns reach their full size, but it's obviously the age, or rather the time that comes along afterwards. Those horns thicken and they develop a lot more. The growth slows down, but it doesn't stop. But it's like any curve, that growth is very fast to begin with, and then it starts slowing down. So it's like this curve where eventually it sort of evens out to the point that at the end of an animal's life there's very little growth anymore. There's regeneration more than growth, with the amount of wear that their horns go through. Plus the parasites that live in horn material that sometimes even live on the living horns of things like buffalo. Somewhere, and I must have a look. I don't think it is my mammal book. I think it's one of my other books at home. I mean, this is the only box of books that I brought, and I guess I kind of limited myself to what could fit in the box. I squeezed every book that I could, and there are obviously a lot of books that I wish I could have that I could refer to. And I also I'm lazy. I should be working more in my books than I am trying to do stuff on the computer. Nothing replaces books. However, one of my books has actually got a table of the different growth, the different horn sizes as the growth develops of different antelopes. But unfortunately, this way it's not my Jonathan Kingdon. It's another mammal book I've got at home. In fact, I think it's my capture and care manual. It's not even a book about mammals, it's a book about the capture and the care of wild animals, and it's quite a vital book to have, although I'm not involved in it on a full-time basis. I have had opportunities to be on game capture exercises dating back to the late 80s when we actually translocated one of the first rhino out of the Sabi Sand, where the population was so stable and so safe. Now the outsiders have come in and they just want to kill them all. Oops. I hear talk of lion on Simbambili. I'm thinking that must be the Birmingham boys. I haven't had it confirmed. I'm sure maybe it can be confirmed through our media. But once again, while we have them, it's time for a sunset, everybody. And I think today is going to be a special one. Got the sun on the left or the right of that tree?
To the right.
Yeah, because then it's framed by these two trees, like that. Of course, I could maybe get it that it's in the fork of that cross of those branches. And if you play with the aperture, you play with the different textures of cloud. Hello Carol Ann, welcome to our sunset here in Africa this afternoon. I'd also like you, sorry, now I'm just digressing here, Wim. One of the first days, if you can, try and follow the escarpment there, the whole of the Drakensberg, because it's just showing a little bit in the haze. Because if the sun comes out and it's too bright, we might not see it, but I don't know if you can pick that up. Just make out the escarpment of the Drakensberg. Brian, please go again with the last. Bro, How did I forget that question? Hello, Carol Ann. Sorry. I was thinking of your question and looking at these beautiful dead trees that we've got here. And was thinking of your question, and then it kind of slipped my mind because I saw the mountains. But Caroline was asking about the leadwood and whether the leadwood can be used for furniture or is it too hard. There's a little bit of both, Caroline. It can be used, and there are a few people that are working with it. I know a chap, a friend of mine, that is trying to make a leadwood cabinet at the moment. He's a musician and he works with wood. But it is notorious. Vati Safari Lodge is a lodge fairly close by, kind of between Manuleti, where Open Gate is, and the town of Hoedspruit on the Open Road. They have a leadwood carving, this giant, it's almost like an African head and bust, out of a chunk of leadwood that's probably got to be at least 3 foot thick. And the top part of it is the natural leadwood, and then it's carved into this intricate skull and shoulders or bust, and then you've got the natural leadwood at the bottom. But so finely carved, that must have also, it might as well be stone. In fact, there are probably a number of geological formations that you could carve a lot easier than leadwood. I believe it has also been used in the past as the axles for ox wagons, but generally so hard that it isn't very widely used. This, by the way, is an old knobthorn, decomposing knobthorn, a lot of lichen. Very pretty. I'll do even better, living leadwood in a sunset. That's not a leadwood. That lovely big tree on a little bit of a termite mound. This is a scotia. Okay, now I've got to think, where's the best place to find you a leadwood? I was thinking Zoe's Road, but I might be wrong. We might need to go back towards we're coming here for a reason. We're coming here for another glimpse of the sunset and the distant mountains. And those are the hills in the far western edge of the Sabi Sand that are probably about 12-15 miles away, maybe. Yeah, I'd say about 12-15 miles away. Maybe 18 miles, but at least maybe 30 kilometers. Leadwoods grow in areas that are fairly low-lying because leadwoods need their feet in water. They're one of the trees that when you see a leadwood growing and you want to sink a borehole and try and drill down and find water, if you've got leadwood is one of the trees. If you've got a combination of certain trees, you know, you might be lucky. But there might just be fissures that you might not get a borehole into. But whichever way we go now, we're going over sort of very soft sandy soils, and they're just not a place that leadwoods like to live. But once we go over the hill and down towards the dip where the sausage tree is, I'm sure we'll find there are some leadwoods there. But of course I'd love to show you remarkable specimens of leadwood because they can be very impressive. What an afternoon! Bitten by something, like a little fly. That is very lucky it could fly because I nearly caught it. Can I give you the definition of freedom? Picture of a dove in a tree with an endless sky behind it is the epitome of freedom. It can fly wherever it wants to go. Interesting. On the WildEarth Safari website we've hit over 1 million views in total. You lucky dove. Now he flies. Sorry. Creative side of me is coming out now. There's a piece of bark hanging down off of this old marula tree that has got an eye and a face with the light coming through it. Nature is its own artist, is her own artist. It's no accident that happened. It's just a creative energy that exists, that some of us, or artists and musicians and those able to do so, are able to tap into to do their own creation. It's all out there. It's just finding how to tap into it. Deborah in Arizona? That's a lovely question. But I think, Deborah, I need to clarify something, because what we were doing is we were showing you a view out to the west, and there were some lower hills and then the mountains in the background. And Deborah was asking what animals, or sure, it was a combination question. Are there animals that would actively go to those mountains, and are there animals that particularly live in those mountains and those areas? So I'm not too sure whether you're referring to those little Inselbergs, those little koppies that I was saying was the western edge of the Sabi Sand, 15, 18 miles away, or whether it was the mountains that are more like 50, 60 miles away. We missed him. He was at the dam not long ago. Park here on this little triangle, and we did drive down the road, so I might have driven over his tracks. I want to see. This is a cat that's already walking on the road, and we might be able to catch up with him. Can't find anything. So he might have turned and gone down this end of, but I would have thought that he would have come through this junction, because his tracks were heading right up to this junction, and unless I've driven right over them, which is remotely possible, fairly fresh dung behind us and tracks coming up this way, so he might have cut through, maybe heading back to quarantine. The fact that he's not on any of the roads means that he might have also just gone straight through, so maybe we need to get up to Zoe's road, because that's where he'll come out. That is the direction, unless there's a herd of impala further down. unless he picked up wind of them and he's somewhere here where these impala are. Pass on that. A number of these impala on the left that are still standing on the road have been listening to some birds alarming off to our left. But while we can see that those couple of impala still on the road, if we can just have a look at that black markings on the hind legs, that's actually a gland that secretes a pheromone when they need to. John was asking what that was. I'm sure that's what he was referring to. Either that or the black markings that along the base of the tail going down the rump. It's either those little black bobby sock things or the rump. The black markings on the rump is all about body language. You'll see there's a stripe, a black stripe down the tail. If we can, unfortunately there are a few that are facing away. We might be able to pick up an impala rump. If you're talking about those black markings on the other side of the rump, and you have a look, there's a black line down the center of the tail. There is also a very broad tuft of hair that is folded up at the moment for most of them. Tuft of hair that's very, very white that lies under the tail, and it's tucked in under their rump. And every now and again they flick that. And the black markings with the white tail that they flick is almost like it's like a sephomore. It's like it's called flag signaling. It's a way for them to communicate with each other when they're in a herd like this, that while their head is in the ground and they're feeding, they can be assured that they can continue feeding as long as they can see that little flash of white against the black, that little change, that subtle change in the starkness of white and black and the beige, I suppose. That's that little flick of the tail. As long as they can see that, they know that they can carry on grazing. If one of them were to be alarmed, you will see that none of them will flick the tail at all. And that is a sign to those who have their head in the grass, who are feeding. It's a sign for them to lift their heads and take notice that something might be going on. And the more eyes that are attentive and the more ears that are attentive, the less chance there is of one of them being eaten. And as far as their altruism goes, he who sees the predator first is the least likely to be eaten by the predator. So as long as you're the first one to spot it, you can be sure that you're going to live another day, because that's just the way nature works. It's the way predators work. They're going to go for the ones that can't see them. They've got an element of surprise is everything. The ear markings, the facial markings, everything about their markings, from the darker coats at the top to the lighter at the bottom, everything about their markings has a purpose, has a reason, and a lot of that has got to do with body language. When you're feeding and you see all of those black and white striped rumps receding into your peripheral vision, you know that you've got to follow them because they're starting to move off. This leopard didn't go up towards Zoe's road. There are some things calling. They're not concerned, so this cat might have headed up with. Before we end off, I don't know what we should do. But herd of impala that are allowing us into their innermost circles. And the reason why they're moving is because the ram is herding them just to the right. We'll see him coming into picture shortly. He's actually herding them away from us. He's making sure that they move along. Yeah. Hello, Boyki. Look at him. Yes, I know they're your girls. Don't worry. But just everything about it, it's just his posture. He just has to walk through them, and they sort of like the Dead Sea parting. They part, and he can control them that way. He'll go chasing after a female that tries to run away. It's unusual that they're starting now. And normally there's a lead up to the whole rutting season where you have, well, we'll even find, I'm sure we'll still find a herd of impala somewhere where there are still young boys and there's still bachelors hanging around with the herd, because it's still got a little way to go before they come into estrus and they're ready for the full rut. At the moment they've still got babies that are drinking, for goodness sake. Yet somehow he is lording over this little harem, and he's keeping them in a very tight group, and it's in their best interests to do so, actually. And if he treats them badly, they try and run away, and he chases them and tries to bring them back. See, now he's going to herd them again. Using his horns, using his stature and his posture. Disciplining a child. But they do all give him a wide berth. It's in their best interests, actually. Now what he's doing is he's phlegming. He's actually accessing a vital organ, vomeronasal organ at the back of the throat. The Jacobson's organ. He was... There we go again. The phlegm grimace, or phlegm doing the lemon grimace. It's not sniffing, it's not smelling. There's obviously a female that's urinated there, and he's testing the urine for, I guess, how close she will be to her estrous cycle. A lot of grooming going on over there. Lick me, I'll lick you. Very interestingly, they actually have teeth they're incisors. They're lower incisors on the bottom jaw. Well, I guess you wouldn't get lower incisors on the top jaw, but they're lower incisors, almost comb-like. They've got grooves in them that help to comb through the fur. And just to the left of that, is that oxpecker having a dust bath amongst them. Quite clearly the oxpecker feeling very, very safe under the legs of the impala to be able to have a dust bath, helping itself get rid of parasites. Dust bath can be better than a wet bath or water bath. And back onto the back of an impala. Nobody wants to tolerate him. That oxpecker should be going to bed. They don't want to have trouble anymore. I think it must be such a relief for them at night when the oxpeckers go to bed, because they don't have these birds clinging to them and digging through their fur and pecking into their nose and their ears and their eyes. But now it's on the ram actually, the oxpecker. He's trying to chase it off with his horns. He's managed. The oxpecker's got to go to bed. And I suppose we got to put the camera to bed. It's one of those days where we've had a lovely day. I've had a fantastic time being with you this afternoon. It's been very relaxing. It's been wonderful. I'm glad we spent a little bit of time with elephant. These impala are still looking at something off to the left. That leopard we might follow up. I'll tell Scott where the tracks were, and hopefully we might be able to follow that up in the morning somewhere around Zoe's Road, going on to quarantine with a little bit of luck. And I'll see you in 2 days time. I'll only be back in 2 days time. Hopefully we can get something done on the jigger tomorrow. We just have a problem with it there that the people that worked on it have to come back and fix whatever it is that they did, because it's kind of a warranty thing. So it's important for that. Thanks Liam, thanks Brian in Final Control, from all of us here at Wild Earth. Thanks for joining me, thanks for all the wonderful questions, and I hope I didn't miss any, because sometimes I forget about them when I see other things. Bye bye everyone, love you lots.